Om Shanti. Warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining for this session. And the topic that we're going to explore is change begins with honesty. It's quite a powerful topic, and I think one that's oddly relevant to these times. But first, I'm just going to say a few words about myself. My name is Judi Rich, and I am speaking to you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And that's where I'm based. And I've been involved with the Brahma Kumaris as a student for almost 28 years. It feels like yesterday. And I think I was really pulled to this practice because it's so relevant, so practical, so honest, actually. All through my young years, I was one of those young people who was asking those big picture questions. Why am I here? What is the point? What am I doing? We call them existential questions. And I think actually many young people do, but because of not really receiving satisfying answers, we kind of let those questions fade away, but they're still there pressing on us. And I know as time went on, they started to get loud again, and there was a tipping point in my 20s. A very good childhood friend who was just a few years older than me suddenly passed away due to an acute illness, and that can have a very urgent effect on one's life. And I think it opened me up to whatever the universe could send as a response to those questions that had always been there. And through a series of very interesting events, I found myself pulled to a Raj Yoga center in the city I lived, Calgary. And it was funny, I'll never forget that first day because I think honesty had a lot to do with it. There was such a tug of war inside. Part of me definitely had driven me there and wanted to go inside, but I sat in the car holding onto the steering wheel for a very long time because another part of me didn't want to go in there. And there was a battle inside. And that battle was, part of me, the heart really being pulled to go in, but some kind of resistance that was afraid of the change that would happen inside, and what would that imply that would need to happen within the self. So it was quite a battle, but the fact that I'm sitting here in front of you suggests I did go in and continue, and found it by far the most satisfying thing I've done with my life. And so, there's such a thread of honesty through this spiritual practice that I think really appealed to me. Really honest change, which I suppose is the only form of true change. And the other piece that really affected me that I might draw on in this talk was, at least in this life, very active. Have always been very physically active. At a young age, was enrolled in ballet classes, but also did lots of athletics and sports and creativity, and have still, to this day, I won't share the age because that would be embarrassing, although honest, but still to this day, very active. Now I'm a fitness instructor. So, and I say that not suggesting I do hatha yoga. I actually teach quite active fitness classes, think boot camp and interval training. So there always was this odd contrast in my life of being very, very active and expressive, but also loving silence and introversion and solitude. And I used to kind of wonder, is there a personality disorder in that? But in truth, I found they complemented each other. And that really, if I want to understand if some inner change has happened, I can't really know until I bring it into outward expression. Otherwise, it's really only in my own mind. So the integration, I think, is a big part of what appeals to me in a spiritual practice, but also a big part of honesty. So, the topic. Change begins with honesty. And I suppose first we have to look at this idea of change. For those familiar with this spiritual organization, the Brahma Kumaris, you will know that our key slogan is, when I change, the world changes. So a couple of obvious questions or ideas are implied by that slogan. The most interesting I find is our concepts of change. And we only really want to change when we're not comfortable where we are. We start to inspire to seek a change, so maybe I'm not comfortable at work, so I start looking for a new job. Maybe I'm not comfortable with the hair, so I start to seek a new hairdo. Maybe I'm not comfortable with the people around me, I start to seek new relationships. The formula that we've become accustomed to with respect to change, that is moving away from something I find aversive or challenging, is that we're going to manipulate things outside of ourselves, that we feel the problem is actually out there. And of course, the formula we use so much in our lives is, it's what's going on outside that determines how I feel. And this is completely upside down to the approach Raj Yoga takes. So when I say that when I change, the world will change, obviously the assumption we're making is that the problem actually isn't out there, but there's something inside of me that is creating what I'm experiencing outside. And if I could figure that, understand that, and transform it in such an honest, deep, and non-violent way, I would very naturally start to see changes happening outside. But the funny thing is, it wouldn't matter anymore, because the real change I was seeking would have happened, and I'd be content with that and be okay with whatever's happening outside. So that's the first assumption that we're going to make, is that the change we're looking for is something internal. The second assumption we're going to work with is what kind of change. And sometimes we think of change as something new or different. In terms of classical creative understanding, when we talk about being creative, creating something new, I remember in art class, if we're going to create something new, we'd always want it to be original, an original work. So the term original is deeply connected to newness. And I love that idea, because the change we're looking at isn't something foreign or unfamiliar. We're actually trying to reconnect with something original. So I'm trying to change back into myself. It's an odd idea, but it's actually driving the feelings inside that it's actually not an aversive or challenging situation outside that's inspiring the change. It's how I am reacting to it. The fact that it's not loyal to my true self, my original self, and that might be driving the change. So we're looking at two aspects. It's going to be an inner change and one that reconnects me to my original self. The term we sometimes use is highest potential. And that brings us to the word honest. I really love this word, and I think anyone who sticks with any transformative practice has to develop a good relationship with this word. I think of honest as a blending of two other words, honor and best. Honor and best equals honest. So being honest is really about honoring the best within the self. Again, a little bit different. It's a complete focus on the self, and it's acknowledging I am trying to reconnect to my original self, my highest potential, the best of myself. We sometimes use this word honest in a bunch of other ways that may not in themselves be honest. One of my favorites is when we go up to someone and we say, "Can I be completely honest with you?" And we kind of cringe a little bit inside because we feel that they're about to criticize or comment on something we're doing. And they say, "You do so-and-so, and it really annoys me." So I personally am not a fan of using the word that way. I think a more honest use of the word is perhaps, when you do this, I notice that this happens, that I'm doing something, it activates something inside of me, and that's actually what I want to look at. I'm not really interested in trying to change or control other people so I can be happy. I'm trying to gain some mastery of the self, emerge my own dignity, because I believe that's the only way I'll be happy. And Raj Yoga is all about happiness. Understanding happiness is the result of acting and interacting in alignment with my highest potential, a state of dignity. Then we are happy. So this honesty we're going to explore, honoring the best in the self. There was something interesting I used to enjoy, and it's deeply imprinted on me, so I've noticed that I carry it forward into all my active activities as well as my spiritual practice. Something that we were taught or trained or absorbed by osmosis in ballet class, because we're very young and no one really said it, you just picked up on it. Any activity, any learning of an art, so in this example, ballet dancing, is about change. It's about growing and progressing in that art or craft. So change is implied. I don't want to invest all of that money, or it was my parents' money, and my time and my attention and my heart in something in which I don't see any progress. The implication, the understanding is I'm going to grow and progress as I master the craft or art. So change is a given. And we keep progressing through levels of dance. And what we're taught, there's a few interesting points that I think are relevant to this discussion. One was what we had to wear. And in ballet class, especially the little ones, we had to wear just leotard and tights. And I find that very honest attire. The idea was that we could not hide behind baggy clothing, and that the instructor, the ballet master, could see everything that was going on with respect to our alignment. Ballet especially is it's been seen as a pure form of dance in the sense that it demands very precise alignment. It's really maximizing what the architecture of the body can do. And architecture always wants good alignment to be able to be resilient and able to perform. So the alignment was everything, and we had to wear very, very honest attire, could not hide anything. And the teachers could see everything we were doing. And of course, the teachers had a trained eye to see very deep the cause of imbalances or asymmetries. So there was always this eye, this very honest eye, hiding nothing as we're moving around. So that was one thing that was very interesting in that class. But the other thing is that you learned how to self-correct. And so very often we would be given a combination that we would have to perform in groups. And so as one group was performing, the others were left to practice in the back of the room. And there'd always be mirrors everywhere. And some might think the mirrors were for vanity. Not at all. They're a key part of self-correction. So we would be practicing in the back while one group was performing for the teacher. And you'd stand in front of the mirror and you had a vision inside. You can call it your highest potential, but a vision inside of what the right alignment was, what the ideal was, the objective ideal was to look like. And the idea was to be able to look at where you are, what you're doing. Perhaps there you would see a gap and be able to correct yourself. You wouldn't sit there and blame the mirror, but you actually were aware, okay, I'm looking at the mirror in order to self-correct. And self-correction, or following directions in general, is an art in itself that I find fascinating, because there's so many ways it can break down. And the reason it can break down is for a variety of different reasons, but it certainly can break down and not be aware that that's happening. Honesty is so much about being able to see clearly, without judgment or violence, but clearly what I'm doing, and if there's a gap between what is possible and what I'm actually doing, and maybe even understanding why that gap is there again, so that there's no violence. I can actually help myself. So directions can break down if the directions are given and my mind is elsewhere. I'm not even listening, even though I'm present in the room. I'm not really present. I am thinking about something else, probably addicted to thinking about something else, and I didn't even hear the directions, so obviously I can't follow them. Another reason is I am present and I am listening to what is being told to me, but I'm not capable at this time, for injury or whatever reason, to follow those directions, but I can see their benefit. So then I'll spend some time preparing myself, getting myself to a point where I can follow those directions. That's very honest to say, no, I can see the benefit of those directions, but I can also see that at this time, I'm not capable of following them. Again, in dance, it might be due to injury or asymmetry. So then I will do some work on myself so that I'm able to follow those directions if I have the interest to do so. The third reason is that I heard the directions and I'm even capable of following them, but I don't really think they apply to me. They must apply to Joe over there. So this is when things start to get interesting. And the other possibility, which I find the most fascinating, is that I heard the directions, I'm capable of following them, and I believe I am following them, and I simply do not have the clarity to see I'm actually not following them. So I'm not getting any of the benefits of them, but in my mind, I think I am. So back to that resistance that I spoke about. when I first came to the Raj Yoga Center, and that has a lot to do with what blocks us from following directions in an honest way that are beneficial for us, that and allow that change, that reconnection with our highest potential. We want to do it. There can be something blocking it that either has me thinking it's got nothing to do with me, or I don't have the clarity to see, I'm not actually doing it, but I have been deceived. I have deceived myself into thinking I am. And almost always when we look at this spiritually, the deception or the deflection is coming from something we call body consciousness, but really ego or arrogance. Ego is the enemy of honesty. And ego has been playing a function in our lives. It's really been keeping us alive. Because ego really is assigned, has the mission of trying to sustain our sense of self-worth. And very quick series of questions will help us to understand how that works. Just as you're sitting there now, think about how long the human body can go without food. How long can that human body go without food? Now, if you're me, the answer will be a few hours. But thinking honestly about this, it has been shown, maybe even weeks. Okay, that's a very gross form of matter, food, and quite frankly, especially if you've got some stores in there, it can go for a while. So let's get to more subtle energy, water. How long can the human body go without water? It's definitely shorter, maybe a week, and that's stretching it. And getting even more subtle, how long can the human body go without air, without oxygen? Well, it certainly isn't weeks. It's not even days. It's not even hours. If you're a synchronized swimmer, it might be minutes, but for most of us, it's very, very short. As the energy of sustenance gets more subtle, the time we can go without it becomes shorter. So let's get very subtle and even put aside the body, now talking about you. How long can you survive without love or regard? And the answer is 0 seconds. We cannot survive at all without love and regard. And if I can't get the real thing, if I can't get real love and regard, I somehow have lost that capacity, then I'll go for the artificial version. I'll actually start to hunger it and get addicted to it. And that artificial version, some call it external validation, image management, looking for approval in the eyes of others or through actions. It's really ego's job. It employs something called desire as a key employee to keep it going. But it's heartbreaking, actually, because we deserve better than artificial. But because we lose access to the real thing, some call it self-respect and self-love, we lose access to that. We start to take it externally through relationships, through roles, through responsibilities, through different positions we might hold, just through stuff. Which version of the device do you have? I know these are very gross examples. It can get quite subtle and insidious, actually. But we start to just hunger for it, desire, and get addicted to where we find good sources of artificial love and regard. And ego builds an empire inside of us. It really moves into our deep, deep bones. And so when I embark on the spiritual path where I'm going to start to follow directions that are intended to bring me back to my original state, where there is true, real, honest self-love and self-respect, it's like giving an eviction notice to ego and all of its employees. And it digs its heels in and says, I'm not going anywhere. I have been so loyal to you and I have helped you out so much. There's no way. And it will set up all sorts of different ruses and deceptions to stay alive. And it loves to block honesty. Honesty really means often shining a light on ego. And ego likes to operate behind the scenes. It doesn't want you to see it operating. So it gets very interesting in there, being able to move forward, to really move into that journey back to the self when it's often being blocked in such subtle ways by those resistance forces inside. What is helpful is to know that that's going to happen. I found that so helpful. Some say, it sounds kind of dark. But I found it really helpful to be aware. And I think that's what I experienced that first day I went to the Raj Yoga Center, is that my heart wanted to go in and ego wanted me to stay out. Luckily, our hearts are very strong, very, very strong. I would say they're stronger than ego. I know that sounds fantastical sometimes, but is there life beyond ego? We wonder. If I took away everything, the roles, responsibilities, relationships, stuff, positions, what's left? Of course, pure me is left. And I think of the heart, which is such a key part of honesty. We even say, look in the mirror of your heart. Just as we looked in the mirror in ballet class, look into the mirror of your heart. And sometimes we think of the heart as a source of a lot of emotions. But the way I think of the heart after coming into this spiritual practice, it is the keeper. It's like this beautiful jewel box, not the physical heart. And I know sometimes we say, oh, my heart. Trust me, if any of you who have done kinesiology, anatomy, physiology in medical, you know this is not a pretty looking thing. It's a muscle. It's not pretty. It certainly doesn't look like what we draw on Valentine's Day. So we're not talking about this muscle. We're talking about something within the self. And I think of the heart as this beautiful, almost like jewel box, figuratively speaking, in which is kept a memory of our most noble ideals, a memory of our highest potential, a memory of what it's like to live with grace and dignity. That is kept in our heart. And it creates a deep longing in the self, in the soul, a really deep longing. And often ego will lock the heart. The memories, everything's still in there. I just can't seem to access it. Which means the honesty will be very challenging. And all that ego does is, rather than looking in the mirror of the heart, which has so much, because those memories are there, a deep, deep self-belief is there. Because it's recorded within us, these memories, it is me. A deep self-belief, deep self-trust, that's all kept in the heart. Ego locks it and would love to throw away the key. And says, instead of looking in the mirror of your heart, look at me for a mirror. And the mirror that ego provides is like something in a fun house. So distorted. Oh my goodness, the thoughts that come into our head when ego is driving them are really quite insane. Oh, the other day, a soul was sharing the story, and they were talking about, I mean, this soul is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful being, beautiful qualities. And they're sharing a part of their spiritual journey in which they compared themselves. You know, we have all done it, to get that kind of competitive, shall we say, even jealous, but comparing themselves. And I'm sitting here listening to them and thinking, wow, we must be so blind to our own beauty to be doing that, because it's an act of madness. Each of us is one of a kind, stunning in our individuality. And the fact that we would be blind to that and think that I need to be like somebody else is mad, absolutely mad. But it's a madness that ego creates and all of its counterparts. This hunger, this desire for value. So when we look in the mirror of ego, which is very distorted, crazy thoughts start to come, and we become very disloyal. We dishonor ourselves, so it's dishonest. And so we need to have a chance in this battle and unlock our heart. And that's a very interesting thing, because we're not quite sure what the key is to unlock it. It's actually a double lock we discover when we come into Raj Yoga. A double lock that unlocks all these beautiful things in the heart, rather than the mirror and memories that ego keeps in its version. We get to have a very beautiful and deep understanding of the self, which will be so central in moving honestly towards the peak, our highest potential. So I want to know, what is my potential, and what is all the capacities within the self, and that really fueling the flame of that deep self-belief, self-trust, this double lock. 2 keys. The first key is that with ego, it lives on the surface. It can't survive in the depths. And the surface is in terms of the image. So we talked about those aspects of the image, the relationships, the roles, the responsibilities. None of these are bad. I just don't want to invest my sense of self and value in them. I still want to interact with them. Expression is a beautiful thing, but I don't want my sense of self to be so entangled in my value. And that's exactly what ego does. It lives out there on the surface. And I'm going to include in that even this package. We call it the costume. This is also fair game for ego, this physical image, the body. We become very sensitive to the criteria of that. There was a book, I remember when I was quite young. As you can see, I'm in a body that, I don't know if it shows up, but has a little color. So coming from a household where one parent was in a black body and the other in a white. And I was very lucky. They were kind of immune to all of it. But there was a book I remember reading as a young child. I believe it was called The Girl with the Bluest Eyes by Toni Morrison. And it really was capturing this idea of investing so much of ourself in this body and our value, becoming very sensitive to the criteria of the physical. So if I'm a certain age, I expect that I should perform a certain way for that age, or a certain gender, or a certain ethnicity. It goes on and on. So actually a lot of our sense of value, that artificial source of value, is coming from the package. So that's all ego's terrain, image. I need something much deeper as that first key to unlock the beauty in the heart. And so we talk about something called soul consciousness, rather than thinking of myself in such a temporal way, external way, physical way, which is all quite superficial. I want to think of myself in a very deep and timeless way. And we even use the term, the greatness of the human spirit, to really start to identify with that phrase. That it's not so much that I have a spirit or I have a soul, but that I am a soul. And I've completely disconnected with what that implies or signifies about me, the meaning of that I am a soul. So starting to reconnect with this very timeless experience of the self. Anything that is timeless or eternal is invaluable, absolutely invaluable. They say a diamond is forever more valuable than a diamond. So it's really a chance to connect with the real value of the self that's independent from anything temporary, all these things that come and go. This is intrinsically who I am, my intrinsic goodness and value. So this is very good to have that experience. But I'll need a little bit more, a second key, because there's been an effect on my heart, effect on me, by being influenced for such a long period of time by body consciousness, ego, and desires. And I might taste my greatness, but I won't be able to stabilize there. These other voices that have gotten into my head from ego, they just keep coming back, creating doubt. And so I need to really remove. I can't really move forward towards self-respect, true change, while those other forces are still working too. It's like having two songs playing at the same time. It's really challenging. So I really need to resolve that and start to remove the effect of that, those dishonest voices, those untrue voices of ego. So that second key is to form an alliance with someone who can really support me, who has the power to remove those other voices that I've internalized. And we call that someone God, the divine, the supreme soul. I think of it as my number one cheerleader, to be honest. Someone who looks at me and there is no doubt as to who I am and my own value. Before we go into meditation, I'll just end with a story that when I was in grade 1, I went to a school where we had one teacher in the morning, and it was a language. It was actually a Jewish school, more than language, it's cultural. So in the afternoon, we had our Hebrew teacher. And I was super lucky because my morning teacher, Mrs. Tillotson, was actually beyond the age of retirement, but she was so good. They begged her to come of retirement, and so she was my teacher for the morning sessions. And then my Hebrew teacher, the Hebrew teachers were excellent in understanding Judaic language and culture, but they weren't trained in teaching. So quite frankly, they were terrified to be left alone in a room of 6-year-olds. And 6-year-olds are so good. They're very honest. They can pick up the scent of fear and work with it. So there was a day when parents could come and observe their children in class. And in the morning with Mrs. Tillotson, she was a wonder. And we loved her. She was so well behaved. And our parents would say, "Oh, my child is like a little angel. because we were just lovely, Mrs. She would just give a signal and we knew what she wanted and we'd do anything to make it happen. She never had to discipline us, and yet we were so disciplined. It was remarkable. And then the afternoon came and our parents looked confused because they said, "What is it? Is this my same child?" Because they're a little devil right now. We were so out of control. And what was going on? Mostly it was about vision. In the morning, Mrs. Tillotson's vision on us was so respectful. You literally, although I was 6, I knew I could feel it. She looked at each of us equally, in the sense that of equal value. She never compared us, never felt favoritism, and each of us was an invaluable jewel. That was her vision. It was so pure. And in the afternoon, I knew that the teacher looked at us with a lot of doubt and as if we were little monsters. So this very pure vision brought out the best of us in the morning, and this very doubting vision brought out the worst of us. And so the power of having this very pure vision really helped to, at that time, really melt away. We just showed up in our pure form at our best. Seeing is such a key part of honesty. So these 2 locks, I want to see myself in such a timeless way so I can believe, have a taste of my highest potential. That's called soul consciousness. But I also want to be seen in such an honest way so it finishes any doubts, any of these other forces that have gotten inside of me when I try to survive with ego. And that's God's job, is to really finish all of that within the self. And then I'm able to move forward, deep faith in the self, but not deceiving myself. And the ultimate form of honesty isn't when I'm seated and have these experiences, but when I start to act and interact in alignment with my highest potential. That's an honest life. So we're going to take a moment now to see if we can have a little bit of an experience. And if you want to use the word meditation, you can, but I don't want you to feel any pressure that I'm going to meditate. No, this is just a chit-chat with yourself, a quiet conversation with your own heart. Sitting comfortably, I sometimes feel in a royal way, as if you're about to meet a very important person. I bring my awareness completely into the present moment, aware that I'm sitting here now with a sense of purpose. I'm not here to check out. I'm here to check in. I am aware that through most of the day, my mind is out there in the world under the influence of body consciousness, of ego, out there in the world, begging, seeking, looking for different forms of artificial love and regard. So my mind is busy thinking about roles, responsibilities, doingness, trying to rewrite the past, worrying about the future, all these different activities that ego inspires. I'm aware of that. And I know it's become a deep habit. I'm very honest with myself about this. It's okay. I understand. And so I'll be patient. This effort to step away from those externalized activities and go inside as if on a treasure hunt. to rediscover myself, free from the image. I'm even willing to let go of thinking of myself as this body. I am so intrigued to know what it feels like to experience my pure value. I, the living being. There's nothing more valuable than life itself. And so I begin my journey inwards, moving beyond the noise of my usual thoughts, day-to-day life, and entering a quiet place inside, a sacred space inside, a timeless space. It's like entering my heart, because there's a memory inside of the real me. I, the spiritual being, I, the soul, this beautiful jewel of life. I even visualize it as a living diamond that is me. Not physical at all, not even a physical diamond, but so precious. And when I am clean and shining, unmarked by the effects of time, every facet of me is brilliant. As I sit here now, I start to savor some of those facets, the specialities, the qualities of the self. Not just thinking them, but feeling them. They are me. The peace, the kindness, the love, the lightness, the sweetness. Taking a moment to appreciate, experience the qualities of the self that my heart remembers. I know it does, because when I see these qualities being expressed by someone I'm observing, they almost move me to tears. They touch me deeply, reminding me of myself, the integrity of the self. Feeling those qualities, the beauty, the highest potential, the best of the self. And as I go deeply into that experience, it almost naturally draws me more and more into that sacred space, draws me into the company of the divine, the parent of all souls, the one who sees us at our best and understands why we move away. The value maker, the one who looks at us in such an honest way. Feeling God's vision on me. It's not so much about whether I believe in God or not, but do I experience God's belief in me? And it's not about praising that being, but experiencing God's regard for me. Because God is truth. There is no more honest soul than that one. God's vision can silence any lies that have crept into our heart. And with that power of self-belief and God's support, I start to move towards my highest self, highest potential, with so much honor and honesty. Many obstacles and challenges will come. There will be resistance, but I will not deny what is going on. I will see clearly and never lose trust in the self. I will not be deceived by ego, and I will not lose belief in myself. A very honest journey back to my highest potential as a soul. I deserve that, and the world will benefit so deeply when I am an honest presence in it. Thank you, oh beautiful souls, for joining in this session. I have such deep faith in the human spirit. I think we are each a wonder, and I sincerely hope that you will have the chance to appreciate the wonder of the self and nurture it back into life. Om Shanti.